You're walking slowly, barefoot, of course, along a sun-warmed trail in the highlands of Ethiopia. The air smells faintly of crushed grass, warm stone, and something smoky curling in from far away. Maybe incense, maybe someone's breakfast. You're surrounded by bushy, gnarled trees that seem older than time, and the occasional goat that stares at you like it knows all your secrets and plans to tell absolutely no one. Your robe, because yes, tonight you're dressed like a 9th century monastic wanderer, is loose in linen and smells like sunlight. Bees hum somewhere in the distance. A bell rings softly from a nearby monastery carved into the rock face. You probably won't make it through this day. Before we wander into ancient rituals and the mysteries of predicting rain with beans, let's take a breath. Like, subscribe, whisper something wise into the comments, and do let us know your location and local time. It's a quiet pleasure to imagine you in your own corner of the world, wherever that may be. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. You're headed toward the monastery of Libanos, though it doesn't really have that name yet. The monks call it different things depending on the day. House of Silence, House of Rain, House of possibly too much coffee. The 9th century is a beautifully confusing time in Ethiopia. Christianity has been here for a while, since the 4th century in fact, and it's doing just fine, thank you. But out here, among these high-altitude ridges and isolated hermit caves, the spiritual life is less about church doctrine and more about quietly observing the rhythms of the earth and brewing suspiciously strong drinks at 4 a.m. You reach the gate, wooden hand-carved and shaped like an arching eyebrow. A young novice in sandals nods you through without a word. He's holding a handful of roasted berries. Not berries for eating, but berries for thinking. Coffee Arabica, yes, that coffee, native to these very hills. Right now it's still just called Buna, and it's not for cafes or oat milk foam art. It's medicine, it's mystery, and it's possibly a weather forecasting tool, though that part hasn't been peer-reviewed. The monks don't drink coffee for fun. They drink it because staying awake all night while praying isn't as poetic as it sounds. Picture this: hours of chanting, meditation, candlelight, and then someone accidentally snoring through matins. Enter coffee, the unofficial saint of alertness. You sit near a small hearth where a pot of jabina, a round-bellied clay coffee pot, bubbles softly over coals. The air is smoky with frankincense and roast. The senior monk, Avatesfe, stirs the pot with practiced care. He's the kind of man who speaks in sentences that take 5 minutes and somehow include the weather, a parable, and your deepest fears. Rain will come, he murmurs, if the beans hiss but do not crack. Yes, that's our obscure cultural tidbit for this evening. Some Ethiopian monks believe the sound of roasting coffee beans could predict rainfall. If they hissed and smoked heavily without popping, it meant moisture in the air, rain within the week. If they cracked loudly like corn, it meant dry winds were on the way. Historians still debate whether this practice was genuinely meteorological or just the ancient equivalent of "my knee hurts, so it's going to storm." You take a sip from a small, handleless cup, thick, dark, earthy. There's no sugar. There's no milk. There's only the intense focus of roasted berry, as if the mountain itself liquefied into something alert and wise. The monks pass around a wooden bowl of roasted chickpeas, because even in 900 AD, someone figured out that caffeine on an empty stomach is a terrible idea. As you sit, a steady wind begins to rise, brushing the tall grasses and sending loose prayers, scraps of old parchment tied with thread, fluttering against the stone walls. One catches in a low bush. You pluck it gently. It reads, in gooey Z script, "Watch the clouds, not the calendar." Somewhere behind you, someone is starting a chant, low, rhythmic, and hypnotic. You're not expected to join. You're expected to listen, to sip, to watch the smoke. And as the sky fades toward evening, deep blue chasing the last of the sun across the plateau. You notice the beans have stopped hissing. No cracks. Abba Tesfaye glances upward with a slight nod. Rain, he says, 2 days. You're not sure whether to believe him, but it's somehow comforting that he's sure enough for both of you. The rain doesn't come the next day, of course. It never does. Weather is a diva like that, dramatic, unpredictable, and rarely punctual. Still, the monastery prepares. You help spread fresh straw in the grain store. You stack firewood into absurdly neat pyramids. You watch a monk polish a brass incense burner like it's a sacred mirror. Everything here moves slowly, intentionally. No one rushes unless a goat's gotten into the manuscript chamber again. It happens more than you think. Today is a feast day, though that doesn't mean what you think it does. No grand tables, no glittering plates. Just a bit more injera than usual. Maybe a few slices of honey-drenched root vegetables, and enough coffee to float a canoe. You're not entirely sure who the feast is for. It might be Saint Yared, the legendary composer who invented Ethiopian liturgical chant, or it might just be Tuesday. Still, the day is marked. The chant changes, slower and deeper. The incense is heavier. The air tastes metallic. You help stir a massive pot of lentils that smells suspiciously like hope. A younger monk, whose name you haven't learned yet, tells you a story between mouthfuls. Once, there was a monk who wanted to understand God through the wind. He sat on a cliff for 40 days. He lost track of time. When they found him, his beard had turned white, and he only said one thing: clouds speak backwards. No one knows what it means, but everyone agrees it's wise. Here's your major historical fact of the night. By the 10th century, Ethiopian monks were not only preserving Christian theology, but also transmitting oral histories, tracking astrological movements, and quietly writing some of the earliest agricultural calendars on the continent. These weren't just holy men, they were scientists in sandals. They noted when coffee beans ripened, when the Nile surged, when hyenas yawned early. Yes, apparently that meant something too. Your job this afternoon is to help dry parchment. Not terribly exciting. It's basically ancient laundry. You lay flat animal skin sheets across smooth stones, weighting the corners with carved wooden tools. Some parchments are pale like cream. Others still smell faintly like goat, which is less ideal. One page catches your eye. It's full of strange diagrams, spirals, dots, tiny beans next to raindrop shapes. A primitive weather calendar, or a very tired monk's attempt at a board game. No one's sure. The scriptorium elder simply says, it was Tesfaye's work. He dreamed while awake. You do not ask further questions. You have learned. The afternoon turns golden. Shadows grow long. A bell chimes 3 times, one for the Trinity or possibly for dinner. The monks gather for the evening brew. Not wine, mind you, more coffee. The second round is always stronger. It's called Tana, and it's meant to open the soul's ears. There's a brief lecture. Monks love lectures. You sip quietly while listening to Abba Tesfaye explain that rain is not just water, but a kind of divine punctuation. Dry seasons are ellipses, he says. Storms are exclamation points. Someone else jokes, and fog is just God mumbling. You laugh softly. No one shushes you. Even the goat seems amused. Here's your obscure tidbit. In some mountain monasteries, monks believe that dreams seen during Tana, the second round of coffee, were prophetic. A monk who dreamt of birds flying north was tasked with preparing the grain stores. One who saw fire ants in his sleep might warn a conflict. And if you dreamed of weeping trees, well, they didn't talk about those much. Tonight, the stars come out slowly. The clouds are gathering, yes, but gently. You lie on your back near the edge of the cliff, staring up as constellations blink awake one by one. Someone begins to hum. The wind smells faintly of rain. Just before sleep, and yes, you are allowed to sleep here. It's not all asceticism and caffeine. You hear the gentle whisper of beans roasting once more. The hiss steady. The crackle absent. Rain maybe tomorrow. And if not, well, the goats seem convinced. Morning arrives disguised as mist. You wake to sky that feels undecided, gray, stretched thin, like a wool blanket someone tried to fold neatly but gave up halfway through. The monastery is unusually quiet. Even the goats are subdued, possibly holding a secret meeting. The usual clatter of clay pots and chant humming is replaced by a low hush, the kind you only hear when everyone is waiting for something, but no one wants to admit it out loud. Your feet touch the cool floor. Stone, always stone. You wrap your robe tighter. It's damp, clinging. The monks are already awake. Of course, they're always awake. Some of them haven't slept since Wednesday. You suspect they just sit upright with their eyes closed and call it meditative wakefulness. You step outside into the fog, where the world feels like it's holding its breath. A cluster of monks stands in a circle around something. You join them slowly, stepping over dew-slick grass and accidentally kicking a prayer stone out of place. You fix it, don't worry. No bad karma. At the center of the circle is a flat rock, and on it, 3 beans. Just beans. No pot, no cup, just 3 lightly scorched coffee beans. You'd think it's a snack left behind. But no, this is a ritual. Abba Tesfaye raises his hand. 3 beans for judgment, he says, with a theatrical pause that makes you wonder if monks invented drama. 1 for the sky, 1 for the earth, 1 for the voice of both. The monks murmur in agreement. Someone sneezes, possibly in awe. You learn that today is Kaloma Day, a rare and peculiar observance that only this monastery seems to follow. It's not on any calendar. It just happens, according to local tradition. Only preserved here. Mind you, once a year, the beans are left on the stone overnight. If they darken evenly, it means the weather will bless the harvest. If one is cracked or eaten, yes, squirrels count. It means the monks must fast for clarity. This year, the beans are perfect. Rain is on schedule. You wonder briefly if the beans really predict it, or if everyone has simply decided they need them too. Honestly, in a world where goats interrupt sacred chants and dreams dictate food storage, this is one of the less strange ideas. A light drizzle begins just as the monks bow their heads in thanks. It's not a downpour, just a polite suggestion of rain. Enough to bead in your hair, to soak the rim of your sleeve, to turn the earth from tan to deep brown. You smile. Tesfaye gives you a look that clearly says, "Told you so." Today's work is different. Everyone is relaxed, like students after final exams. The coffee has worked. The prophecy has landed. Rain has arrived. You're assigned to help in the gardens, which sounds peaceful until you realize the tools haven't changed in 800 years. You spend the morning digging channels with a bent stick and try not to step on snails the size of your thumb. One monk teaches you a chant to sing while planting. It goes, more or less, asterisk, earth beneath, sky above, coffee between. Asterisk, the agriculture here isn't separate from spirituality. It's part of it. Growing beans is prayer. Brewing them is offering. Drinking them, well, that's probably the holiest part. Here's your historical fact. By the 11th century, long before coffee ever reached Arabia or Europe, Ethiopian farmers were cultivating coffee Arabica deliberately, not just for monks, but for medicine, rituals, and local trade. It wasn't mass market, obviously. Starbucks had not yet arrived. But coffee was already sacred, an herb of energy, a brew of balance. Later in the day, you help carry wet parchments inside. The ink is still drying on a new set of hymns. One is dedicated entirely to clouds at walk, and another to the roar of beans and flame. You don't ask. Some metaphors are best left mysterious. Your obscure fact tonight is this. In certain monasteries, it was believed that coffee could chase away the devil from the stomach. A phrase used when someone felt bloated or sluggish. Or, let's be honest, just grumpy. Coffee as spiritual exorcism. A cup of divine pep talk. The evening wind smells cleaner now. You can see farther. The mist has thinned. Down in the valley, green is returning. The dry season is giving up. The rains won this round. You sit alone for a while after supper. A small cup of Baraka Buna, blessing coffee, in your hands. It's thinner than usual, gentler. Less about staying awake, more about staying here. Tesfaye walks by, silent, then returns 10 minutes later to hand you a single roasted bean. Keep it, he says, for questions you haven't asked yet. You don't speak. You just nod. Tonight, no dreams come. Only deep, black sleep. The kind that smells faintly of roasted hope. You wake before dawn. Not because you're eager, but because there's chanting in your ears. Sleepy chanting. The kind that loops endlessly and includes exactly 3 notes, repeated until your brain waves just give up in a line. You roll out of your straw mat and join the morning procession. Barefoot again, cold floor, candlelight flickering against centuries-old walls. The monks are walking slowly, wrapped in shawls that might have once been white. Incense curls in the air. It smells like something between cinnamon and mystery. Today's ceremony is older than memory. No one really knows when it began. Tesfaye calls it Zeman Buna, which translates roughly to coffee time. But that undersells the sacred vibes. This is a reenactment of the original blessing of the bean. Or maybe the first time someone realized roasting it didn't kill you. Historians still debate whether this ritual existed at all in the early monastic orders, or if the later invention retrofitted to feel ancient. Either way, no one here seems to care. You're handed a bundle of green coffee cherries. Not beans yet, just a fruit. They're tart and a little sticky. One monk shows you how to squeeze the cherry until the twin seeds pop out like slippery pearls. You drop them in a shallow basket. Together, you and 6 others roast them over an open flame. The smoke is intense, heady, deeply comforting. No one speaks. The only sounds are the rustle of robes, the low wind, the crackle of wood. Then the hissing starts. The beans begin to sweat. A few crack. Most don't. The fire nose today is gentle. You feel it in your teeth. Here's your scaldly snack. The first use of coffee as a beverage is often attributed to the 15th century Sufi orders in Yemen, but evidence suggests Ethiopian monks were consuming the boiled or roasted form centuries earlier, mostly for stamina during long prayers. The wine of the bean, they called it. You sip the first cup around sunrise. It's smoky, bitter, grounding. A second cup is passed, then a third. The rule of 3 is important in Ethiopian coffee ceremony. Much later, it will be called Abel, Tana, and Baraka, symbolizing birth, life, and blessing. But here, now it's just warm, 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 like being remembered. You step outside with a 3rd cup and sit under the tree near the garden. The leaves are soaked from last night's rain, dripping rhythmically. Birds sing lazily, probably caffeinated by proximity. A small boy, maybe 7, plops beside you. His head is shaved except for one tiny patch. A monk in training. He holds a small carved goat figurine and tells you it's St. Caldi's goat, the one who discovered coffee by dancing after eating the cherries. You smile. You've heard the story. But the boy has a twist. Some say the goat still lives, somewhere in the mist, watching. You nod solemnly, because sometimes the best thing to do with a myth is agree with it. Your weird cultural tidbit for the day. Certain highland communities use to bury a single coffee bean near the threshold of new homes as a protection charm. The bean was called Habasha's Eye. It wasn't eaten, just watched, silently, like a slightly judgmental house guest. The rest of the day flows like a soft stream. Chant, brew, garden, write, sip, silence. By now you've stopped keeping time. Monastic life doesn't measure in hours. It measures in light, in sky color, in the sound of beans roasting. That night, the clouds roll in again, full this time, heavy, and when the rain comes, it doesn't knock politely. It dances, laughs, crashes. It floods the gardens, splashes off the roof tiles, soaks your robe. You and the others just stand there in it, eyes closed, cups raised, coffee in hand, rain on face. If this isn't prayer, nothing is. The rain has no urgency to leave. It lingers all night, tapping on every rooftop tile with fingers soft and repetitive. You fall asleep to it. You wake up to it. It seeps into the stones, the soil, and your bones, like the earth itself is steeping in a warm bath after centuries of holding tension. No morning procession today. The paths are muddy. The stream is now a small river, cheerfully relocating anything not nailed down, including, it seems, 2 sandals and an overconfident chicken. The monks laugh quietly. They've seen worse. They've probably chanted through worse. You sit near the doorway of the prayer hall, sipping a milder brew. Rainy days call for gentler flavors. The beans are roasted barely past green, producing a cup that tastes like leaves, stone, and memory. It doesn't wake you up so much as politely checking to see if you want to be awake. You don't. The monastery feels softer under gray skies. The walls hum from within, holding heat like secrets. Candles burn slower. No one is in a hurry to copy manuscripts today. A few monks are playing jabita, a traditional game involving a carved wooden board and smooth pebbles. You watch a match that lasts 40 silent minutes and ends with a raised eyebrow and a smile so subtle you nearly miss it. Later, you help rinse beans in cold rainwater. Tesfaye says it purifies them, makes them remember the sky, he murmurs. You wonder if he talks like that even when he's alone. Here's your final major historical fact. By the early 13th century, Ethiopian monks had refined a full 3-part coffee ritual: brew, bless, interpret. They used the beans not just for energy but for divination. The shape of bubbles in the cup, the direction of steam, the timing of the first crack in the roasting. Some even claim they assign spiritual meaning to the color of the foam. Of course, not all scholars agree. Some argue that these so-called rituals were later embellishments layered onto otherwise practical routines. Others believe monks genuinely sought divine signs in their coffee cups. But then again, people have stared at stranger things, hoping to glimpse eternity. This morning, Tesfaye performs one last reading. A fresh brew in the jabina, 3 sips. He examines the steam, nods, blessings ahead. Not all expected, but good. You'd roll your eyes if you weren't so soothed. You're allowed to rest after lunch. No parchment to scrub, no beans to sort. You lie on your back under a thatched overhang, rain dripping in rhythmic patterns beside you. A goat naps nearby, breathing deeply, like it knows the world is briefly at peace. Your obscure cultural tidbit for the finale. In remote corners of Ethiopia, some believe that if you heard a goat sneeze during the 3rd cup of coffee, it was a sign your ancestors were watching you. Probably confused, but fond. The sky remains low and heavy, but warm. A fire crackles inside. Tesfaye sits beside it, humming a tune with no name. You ask what it means. It's for the beans, he says, to thank them for speaking. You smile. He hands you a fresh cup, your last for now. Take this with you, he says. Not the cup, the stillness. It's more portable. So you drink, you listen, you breathe and smoke, and wet earth and roasted truth. The fire dims, the beans stop crackling, and the rain becomes a lullaby. You lie down on the smooth stone floor, the one that has held so many feet before yours. Some barefoot, some hesitant, some wrapped in worn leather. The rain softens now, becoming mist again, a whisper instead of song. You can still hear the occasional drip from the roof's edge, like the last thoughts before sleep. A small candle flickers nearby, casting golden pools of light on the old monastery walls. They've been painted and repainted over the years, each layer whispering stories you'll never quite know. The incense is faded, but its memory lingers in the air, a breath of myrrh, old books, and gentle resolve. In the distance, a goat bleats once and goes quiet again. Maybe it was dreaming. The monks are singing softly now. You can't make out the words, but you don't need to. The melody carries like warm air, slow and steady. It wraps around your chest like a wool blanket, pressing gently just enough to remind you that you are safe and still and here. You let your body melt into stone. The last bits of thought drift like steam off a cooling cup. That image stays with you. The cup steaming faintly on a windowsill, forgotten but still warm, still waiting. Out in the fields, the coffee plants bend under the weight of clean rain. Their leaves are glistening. Somewhere under the soil, new roots reach out, quietly, invisibly, preparing to grow. And in your mind, one roasted bean remains, tucked away. For questions you haven't asked yet, sleep now. The monks are still awake. Let them watch the fire. You rest. The rain listens. The world continues turning, slow and soft and good.